It was a winter morning in 1944, somewhere along the frozen fields of Belgium. A German sergeant, his uniform torn and blackened by smoke, stumbled out of a tree line with his hands raised above his head. Behind him, the remnants of his company lay scattered across a landscape that looked like the surface of the moon. Craters from American artillery shells pockmarked the earth in every direction. Burned-out vehicles still smouldered in the grey light. The sergeant had survived the Battle of the Bulge, but barely. As American soldiers surrounded him and began the process of taking him prisoner, he muttered something in broken English that his captors would hear repeated hundreds of times over the coming months. Something about the shells, something about the sky, something that every German prisoner seemed compelled to say. What the Americans did not know was that this sergeant would soon find himself at a secret facility on the banks of the Potomac River, a place that officially did not exist. There, hidden microphones would record every word he spoke to his fellow prisoners, capturing conversations that would remain classified for over 50 years. And in those recordings, the same themes appeared again and again, spoken by generals and privates alike, by hardened veterans of the Eastern Front, and by teenage conscripts who had barely fired their rifles. They all said the same thing about fighting Americans. This is the story of what they said, why it mattered, and how their words, spoken in the belief that no one was listening, revealed the truth about the American way of war. The German Wehrmacht of World War II was widely considered one of the most formidable fighting forces in military history. From the lightning campaigns that conquered Poland in just 5 weeks during September of 1939 to the brutal years of combat on the Eastern Front, German soldiers had developed a fearsome reputation. Their tactics were studied in war colleges around the world. Their panzer divisions had rewritten the rules of armoured warfare during the stunning conquest of France in 1940. Man for man, German infantry were regarded by many military historians as superior to their opponents in training, discipline, and tactical flexibility. The Wehrmacht had defeated every army it had faced in the first 2 years of the war. When the United States entered the war after Pearl Harbor in December of 1941, German commanders initially viewed American forces with something approaching contempt. Nazi propaganda had portrayed Americans as soft, decadent, and incapable of real sacrifice. The Reich Ministry of Propaganda under Joseph Goebbels depicted America as a nation of jazz musicians and Hollywood actors, corrupted by racial mixing and dominated by Jewish financiers. Luftwaffe Chief Hermann Göring famously dismissed American industrial capacity with the sneering comment that Americans only knew how to make razor blades. German officers who had spent years fighting the British and the Soviets assumed that the inexperienced Americans would prove far easier to defeat. This assumption appeared to be confirmed in February of 1943, when German forces under Field Marshal Erwin Rommel inflicted a devastating defeat on American troops at the Battle of Kasserine Pass in Tunisia. American units broke and ran. Officers lost control of their men. Equipment was abandoned in panicked retreats. The Germans captured thousands of prisoners and inflicted heavy casualties, killing or wounding over 6,000 American soldiers in just a few days. Rommel himself noted that the American forces had shown their inexperience, losing sight of the broader picture in the chaos of battle. In the aftermath, local North African nomads stripped dead bodies of boots, socks, and jackets, a grim scene that General Omar Bradley witnessed upon his arrival and never forgot. But something strange happened in the months and years that followed Kasserine Pass. The contempt that German soldiers initially felt toward Americans began to change. It did not transform into respect for American infantry tactics, which many Germans continued to criticize throughout the war. Instead, it transformed into something closer to dread. A specific kind of fear that had nothing to do with the skill of individual American riflemen and everything to do with what those riflemen could summon from the sky and from beyond the horizon. Something that no amount of German training or courage could overcome. To understand what German prisoners kept saying about Americans, we must first understand the secret programs that recorded their words. In the summer of 1942, the United States War Department established a top-secret facility on land that had once belonged to George Washington's River Farm, one of 5 farms that composed the Mount Vernon estate. The site was known only by its mailing address, P.O. Box 1142, Fort Hunt, Virginia. 87 buildings were constructed there, surrounded by barbed wire and armed guards. The facility's true purpose was hidden even from most of the military. Officers stationed there were forbidden from telling anyone, including their families, what they did. Mail was censored. Phone calls were monitored. What happened at Fort Hunt would remain classified until the 1990s, and the full story did not emerge until the 2000s. Between mid-1942 and July of 1945, 3,451 prisoners passed through Fort Hunt. They included 15 Nazi generals, U-boat commanders who had terrorized Allied shipping in the Atlantic, rocket scientists who had built the V-2 missiles raining down on London, and intelligence officers who knew the secrets of German military operations. Each one was brought there for interrogation. But the interrogations themselves were only part of the operation. The real intelligence goldmine lay in what prisoners said to each other when they believed no one was listening. Every room at Fort Hunt was bugged. Microphones the size of watermelons were hidden in overhead light fixtures, behind walls, and inside furniture. Monitors worked around the clock in shifts inside a cramped concrete bunker outside the compound, wearing headphones and transcribing conversations in real time. German listeners fluent in the language captured every whispered confidence, every casual remark between cellmates. The operation produced over 5,000 intelligence reports during the war, including crucial information about German weapons programs, military installations, and troop dispositions. The interrogators were often Jewish refugees who had fled Nazi Germany as children. Many had lost family members to the Holocaust. Granted emergency American citizenship at a nearby federal courthouse, they used their native German and cultural knowledge to build rapport with prisoners. They played chess with Nazi generals. They discussed philosophy with U-boat commanders. They offered coffee, cigarettes, and decent food. Henry Kolm, who later became a physicist at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, recalled at a reunion in 2007 that they got more information out of a German general with a game of chess or ping-pong than they do today with their torture. The approach was based on a simple insight. Prisoners who were treated with respect talked freely, especially when they did not know they were being recorded. When the war ended in August of 1945, Fort Hunt personnel received orders to destroy all records and artifacts within 24 hours. Men burned classified documents continuously, reducing mountains of intelligence material to ash. The secrecy held for decades. The British ran a parallel operation at Trent Park, a magnificent country estate north of London that had once belonged to Sir Philip Sassoon. There, 59 captured German generals and dozens of additional senior officers lived in relative luxury, complete with billiards, a library, table tennis, beer, and whiskey rations. The estate had manicured grounds where prisoners could walk and talk freely. The comfort was entirely deliberate. It was designed to make prisoners lower their guard and speak openly. Hidden microphones were everywhere. They were concealed in light fittings, fireplaces, plant pots, skirting boards, floorboards, and even inside trees in the garden. The billiard table was bugged. One prisoner confidently concluded that the British were too stupid to bug their conversations. He was entirely wrong. Over 1,300 transcripts were produced at Trent Park. In November of 2001, German historian Sonke Neitzel discovered approximately 150,000 pages of these secretly recorded conversations in declassified archives in Britain and the United States. What he found in those pages transformed our understanding of the German soldiers' experience. Among the revelations were candid discussions of atrocities on the Eastern Front, frank admissions of knowledge about the Holocaust, and honest assessments of morale and leadership on the German side. But woven throughout these conversations was a recurring theme, something that German soldiers of every rank mentioned when discussing combat against the Americans. They talked about the artillery. German prisoners in France frequently remarked on the heavy volume of American fire they had experienced. Even Germans who were critical of American infantry consistently praised the artillery. This was the finding documented by the Army Historical Foundation in their comparative study of American and German field artillery in World War II. German prisoners attested to the catastrophic effects of one American innovation in particular, a technique called time on target. Time on target was a method of coordinating fire from multiple artillery batteries so that all rounds struck the target simultaneously, arriving within a window of plus or minus 3 seconds. The mathematics required to achieve this were complex. Each battery had to calculate the exact time its shells would take to reach the target based on distance, elevation, weather conditions, barrel wear, and the specific characteristics of the ammunition and guns being used. Then all batteries would fire at precisely staggered intervals, so their shells arrived at the same moment. A battery farther from the target would fire first.